1. We are live. Okay, welcome back to Our Real Addiction, everybody. I'm Adam, and I'm joined by a special guest here.
Hi, Adam. I'm Joseph. I like movies. I saw this movie we're about to discuss twice because I liked it a lot. But yeah, I also have A-list, so I take advantage of that a lot. I go like at least twice a week.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy.
Before anything, if you want to move your mic a little bit closer to you, cutting out a little bit. But thank you for coming on to the show. We've been talking about it for a while. You've been wanting to come on. You know, you actually were originally a film major.
I was, yeah.
And changed courses.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But we're glad to have you on. I'm a film major right now.
Yeah.
So we'll see where that goes. But really quickly, guys, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hit the bell notification and give this video a like and a share. Share with just one person. We'd appreciate that so much, especially because we have a special guest. If you don't share it, he's going to be disappointed. So it's up to you. So, and if you hate puppies, you won't share. You won't share this episode. So
Yes.
But yeah, so today we're going to be talking about The Killers of the Flower Moon, the new Martin Scorsese film. It is 3.5 hours long. I wasn't excited for it, and then when you said you wanted to talk about it, you'd be willing to come onto the podcast and talk about it. I was like, okay, I'll go see it then.
Yeah.
If it gets you on the podcast or gives you an opportunity to come on, you know, or you're wanting to talk about a film, I was more than happy to. I'm actually glad I ended up seeing it because I did enjoy it. Yeah, I didn't expect me to enjoy it just because I'm gonna be honest. Martin Scorsese has said a lot of dumb things in the media lately in regards to a lot of superhero films that I like, or films in general that I like. So
Yeah.
that's I think for him to go and ask me to go sit 3.5 hours when he complains about a 2.5 hour superhero film, kind of contradicting in my opinion. But nonetheless, very happy I saw this film. Yeah. We saw it together. It was I don't know. Well, if any of our coworkers are listening to this, it was the instance in the plans making it out the group chat. So it was funny. Yeah. So I don't know if you are comfortable discussing that because they know I work at Geek Squad. Yeah. They know you're my coworker, so obviously you work at Geek Squad too.
I work at Geek Squad.
Yeah. But you had written it on the on our calendars, which one of our coworkers implemented. You know, writing our things down. Yeah. And so I write things down I feel like it's a joke that I do it just because I'm only there one day a week. But no, yeah, when I remember I came in and saw it, I thought it was funny because I was just like, I don't remember writing that down. And then Jess had told me you wrote it down. Yeah. So I thought it was funny. And then you happened to be there that day, the day I finally saw it. Yeah. But yeah, no, overall, I mean, Killers of the Flower Moon, I had no idea what this was. And then you explained it to me while we were at working. I was like, okay, sounds kind of interesting. And you had said they were changing the directions. Yeah. So do you want to explain what the difference between the movie and the book in terms of perspectives and, you know, with as lightly as you can without spoilers, I would say.
Okay. So I actually haven't read the book. I've mainly based like my reaction to the book on Scorsese's kind of like input with it. So he's discussed the book and like his reaction to it. Mm-hmm. And basically, without spoilers, the direction of the book is more about the FBI's inception, like their creation and how they helped like solve this case where a lot of murders were happening on Osage land. Mm-hmm. And that's how they had initially developed the story. Was Tom White, the main character. He's kind of like the hero, like resolving all of these murders and finding out who's doing them. But after Scorsese met with the actual people, like the descendants of the Osage, they kind of let him know that there was more going on to the story because these were real people, and that it would kind of be a better way to tell their story if they focused internally and less about like the external forces that resolved it. So instead of focusing on the FBI solving the case, which is in the movie, but they instead took the approach of like the indigenous community and kind of the role that Leonardo DiCaprio plays in the indigenous community, but also like the outsiders that are kind of trying to like infiltrate the Osage land and like their fortune. So I kind of appreciated how they redeveloped the script in a way where it took less of a focus on the FBI and those guys and about the people that were being murdered and their culture, which I think kind of added to the runtime as well, was that they were introducing people to this culture, but also kind of getting people familiarized with things they know, like the FBI and you know, when that was created during, I don't know, this was like the 1930s, 1940s.
Yeah, it's right after the First World War, and then on the cusp of World War II. But yeah, like you said, okay, I had no idea you didn't read the book. So I kind of put you on the spot there. I apologize. But you had told me about that they were taking a different direction.
Yeah.
I know. Well, when we walked out of it, I remember telling you that I'm glad they did it in the direction that they did. Like, and you had mentioned, because they focus on the Osages, you know, how they were as a tribe, if that is culturally inappropriate, I do apologize. But essentially, as these Native Americans, and it's just like, and it was so good to see that, just to see how they were treated, but yet how they came to wealth and all that, basically, everything that went into them being, these pioneers of the oil industry, in America. But yeah, so overall, I mean, I'm glad it took that, because I think had they done it the route of the book, or had Scorsese done it the route of the book, I would have felt a lot less sympathy towards these characters and more of seeing, okay, this guy is just kind of doing his job. Yeah. Let's get to the end of that. See, because if they had done that and then the film shifts directions of it, like, and starts following Tom White's character, then it kind of would have felt like, okay, like, what was the point of all that if they're still just going to kind of be treated as like afterthoughts, and we're going to be focusing more on what he's doing and not the character, specifically the two characters, with Lily Gladstone and Leonardo DiCaprio. It would have felt more of like, okay, we kind of wasted time there. But overall, I've got a little bit of the time, I do have the complaint about it, but it's acceptable in the sense of like, I don't know where you'd be able to trim fat on this film without it not feeling the weight, because, I mean, if you read the book, if you've seen the movies, there's no surprise there's a lot of death in the film, and every time I feel someone died in the Osage tribe, it was very, very moving. Like, there's a sense of remorse and a sense of sadness, because they had, with Lily Gladstone's character, they had really, really focused on her, and it really helped basically the emotion of all these scenes. So I appreciated it in that sense. Really quickly, just really want to talk about its opening weekend. So in its opening weekend, it made $23.3 million, which is right on track where it was in terms of projected box office. So it hit its mark. It is being considered a flop at this current moment. I'm assuming that's to sort of like Scorsese's standards, because I'm sure his box offices have been pretty decent. I'm gonna be honest, I didn't look into it, but it's currently sitting at a budget of $200 million. So in my opinion, that's pretty concerning. Just because you have a $23 million box office opening weekend, which is good. A lot of films would be happy to make $23 million. Scorsese, renowned director in Hollywood, is shooting for the stars. Since that opening weekend, it's made $44 million worldwide. So domestically, it made 23, and internationally, it has made 21. At the time of people hearing this or watching this episode, it will be further into that, probably closer to the $70 million range, depending on how the next couple of days go. For this film, we're recording this on a Monday, and you'll be hearing it on a Friday, or hopefully watching it on a Friday. But yeah, so overall, I don't think I don't think it's going to make anywhere near back its budget. This is another major film in Apple Studios, though. So this is one of the big films that Apple it was that has begun to push into theaters as opposed to its streaming services. So I don't know if you heard a while back, Apple had said, "Hey, we're pumping $1 billion to get our films into theaters." They're gonna start basically putting all their films. Cause did you ever see Coda?
Yeah, won the Oscar, right? It was
The one that
deaf
won
movie.
best motion picture.
Yeah.
That didn't get to theaters until after it won.
Oh, I see.
The Oscars does this thing where the films that are nominated, they'll come back to theaters, or if they were streaming films, they'll get put into theaters.
Okay.
So Coda finally had got box office, went into movie theaters when they had finally pushed it. So this was before Apple started pushing $1 billion into its film. Apple's trying to get into the movie game. They're trying to really set up things, and it makes sense. We've seen the things that they've done in terms of like their gear when you have the Apple ecosystem with you. Like with your AirPods, when you're watching a film, you can have spatial audio. Even with the new Vision Pro coming out, it's going to be very like in your face, augmented reality, obviously. But you're going to essentially, you're going to be able to have spatial video. Not really sure what that is, considering nobody has that. So we'll see how people how that goes. But Apple's trying to get into the movie game, which makes sense. There's been rumors of them buying Disney for a while now. So the Killers of the Flower Moon could probably be one of these predecessors in terms of paving the way and Apple being a big game player in the film industry. Obviously, they have the streaming service. They have a bunch of films that have been on there. But overall, in a few thoughts, how'd you feel walking out of Killers of the Flower Moon?
Well, I really enjoyed my first reaction after having walked out, just because a movie that's this length and this subject matter to have a wide release, I thought that was impressive on its own, regardless of like the quality of the movie. But I was surprised with what Apple's doing and their rollout of projects for the rest of the year, because I know it's this movie, Napoleon, and then the Argyle movie, the Matthew Vaughn like spy thriller.
Yeah.
So like they're big budget movies, and I like how they're kind of taking a wide approach to how they're producing projects. It's just like historical epics. It's action adventures. Coda was like a drama, so it's not as if they're just making one type of movie. They're kind of choosing different types of projects. So this is kind of an example of that. But I really appreciated how they gave Scorsese the opportunity to make this movie and tell the story, but also release it on a scale for everybody to see, and it's not just for streaming. I know that it's not going to make the money back, but the amount of people that have seen it already from the crowds that I've encountered, they're pretty open to the movie and receptive. So it's getting like a good crowd response, but I'm not surprised that it's not on track to make its money back. It's too big of a budget, and the story I feel doesn't really draw crowds in a way that maybe like Oppenheimer did.
Yeah.
Because that's also historical, but it was an event movie where I feel like it was gonna make its money back or more. But this is the type of movie where I never really anticipated it breaking even or even making a profit. But it doesn't really mark the quality of the movie that it's not doing well financially.
And I think that's one thing like we try to like advocate on this podcast is like whether people are telling you the film is bad or not, like there's this could probably somebody can see this film and this can be somebody's favorite film, and it's just like, but they or could have been and they didn't give it the chance of day somebody to go watch it simply because of you see the numbers. I feel like the average person, this isn't an appealing film to them. This is for people who love cinema are interested in this, this type of story.
Right.
One thing I will say about Apple, they know how to cast. In terms of they know how to pick, big rollers and or big rollers when it comes to film, because you had Leonardo DiCaprio and Robert De Niro in this film. You also had Jesse Plemons. Those were only the real big, like, I guess you can say, established actors that I knew of. I'm pretty sure and Brendan Fraser, obviously.
Yeah.
Um,
His
who had,
his role was like a cameo kind of.
yeah,
So
cameo role, but still, you had him involved in this, in the film. Regardless, but then you look at, like, you look at the Napoleon film. Obviously, we have Joaquin Phoenix, and you have other people that I recognize, but nowhere in the the realm of being that established or very very established. And even like the Argyle film, you have Henry Cavill, Bryce Dallas Harper, you got John Cena, Sam Rockwell. So it's just like there's people in there. Samuel L. Jackson as well as in this film. Bryan Cranston. I think I thought Ewan McGregor was in this, but I guess not. But point is, they know how to assemble cast. Even with Coda, they had I forget his name, but he's the one who did I think it was no instructions included. Or have you ever seen that film?
no.
No.
Is it a director or an actor?
No instructions included. No, he's an actor.
Okay.
Oh my gosh, I think that's what the film's called. No instructions included. Yeah, instructions not included. You never saw that film? It's a Spanish film with oh my gosh, what's his name? I'm not even gonna attempt to say it just because I'm gonna butcher it. Point is, they know how to cast.
Yeah.
So overall, I mean, you haven't seen The Killers of the Flower Moon, I would suggest checking it out. We can talk into where this is the spoiler, like the spoiler talk at this point. So if you don't like spoilers, this is your warning, your one and only warning, because everything here on out is spoiler heavy and essentially a deep dive into the film. If you don't care, then continue on. But I think I have to say, Leonardo DiCaprio was good in this film, but I think Robert De Niro and Lily Gladstone were the two standouts in this film. Mainly because Lily, who played Molly, who is the wife of Leonardo DiCaprio, whose name is Ernest, she's the victim in this film. The film centers around her, and it's from her eyes. It does kind of start off in the eyes of Leonardo DiCaprio, but the moment we're introduced to her, that's where you kind of shift, and this is your main character. Everything is essentially what's happening to her. A lot of it is through Leonardo or Ernest's eyes, where it's just like we're following him majority of the time, but it's because he's the one who is the catalyst of everything happening. He really, really follows through with Robert De Niro's character, his uncle, who's William Hale. That's his name. He is, William Hale is ultimately the one who wants to steal the Osage's money. What were they referring to it as? They had a term for it in the film. I can't remember.
The head rights or something.
Not the head
about the
rights,
oil.
but they referred to the oil money as something specific. I can't remember.
Yeah.
But point is, Robert De Niro's character, we had kind of talked how, it seemed like he cared for them, but he cared for the money more.
Yeah, I think for him it was he probably saw it as a mutually beneficial relationship, but he was really exploiting these people. I think he would definitely find ways to justify like his actions and that he was providing for these people and by paving roads or just opening businesses and giving them opportunities just because he's white and they're not. They kind of need him. In the movie, they show how even though they're wealthy, they're not independent. They have to have guardians that approve transactions. Any sort of money that's withdrawn or spent has to be considered by their accountant, basically. So they're not autonomous. they're kind of being babysat to spend their own money. But I feel like despite that, like they have their own kind of independence regardless of like the situation that they're in. So I feel like that was like cool to see. I think had they not input the descendants of the Osage to Scorsese, that might not have been included. And the relationship between Molly and Ernest is the heart of the story, and I think even with him, with Ernest, he struggles on whether he loves these people or he's also just exploiting them. I think with Hale, it's kind of more obvious that he's exploiting them, and
Yeah.
he's like the person in charge of all of these crimes that are happening. They all kind of follow back to him. But with Ernest, Leonardo's character, he seems to struggle with the decisions to kind of, I don't know. He's murdering the sisters of his wife and like the family of his wife. So I don't know how long he can live with himself, like because he claims that he loves her, and at a certain point he has to decide that he's doing the wrong thing, and he turns his back on William Hale, his uncle.
Yeah.
But it takes the whole movie for him to reach that decision because he's kind of just following whoever's telling him what to do. Even when Tom White is introduced into the movie, he starts to kind of go into the same role that he was in with his uncle, where he's just doing whatever he's told. And then there's that scene where Brendan Fraser is introduced, and they kind of kidnap him in a way, and they brainwash him into thinking that he was tortured and beat when they were interrogating
Which
him.
is a really funny scene.
It is really funny.
Where he's just like, "Oh, you were tortured." He's like, "No, I wasn't tortured."
Yeah.
He's like, "You were tortured."
Yeah.
He's like, "I was tortured," and it's like, so it's a really funny scene. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt.
No,
But
it's okay.
no, yeah, like you say, like like with Leonardo DiCaprio's character Ernest, I feel like because he was coming back from the war, he doesn't know his place kind of in the world, which is a common thing we see in both World War I and World War II, where our soldiers came back and a lot of them kind of had no idea what to do with their lives because the last couple years of their lives, every day was life or death.
Yeah.
They're at war fighting against Germany and the countries teamed up with them. But point is, he comes back and he doesn't know what to do. So he's kind of like, he's so used to taking orders. I feel like that plays such a major part into his character, where his uncle William is the one who kind of tells him, like you say, go do this, go do that. But then it's just like, not only that, it's just like he tells Ernest, like, hey, like you'd be smart enough to go, or you'd be smart to go and wife up Molly because she comes from money and you come from money, so it's not going to be an issue there, so which I think that's where, like, ultimately, yes, Ernest did love Molly. I think because of he's kind of a dumb character. His character is kind of an idiot in this film. And so it's so easy for him to take orders, and even him, it doesn't sound like he really had that much action in World War. Well, probably didn't. He admits he was a cook, and then so it's just like him easily being persuaded, because like you said, we see it all throughout. The only person who wasn't able to persuade him was his own wife, but I think it's because ultimately that had to do with the fact of him being influenced by his uncle or influenced by others, because there's a scene. Well, the first act is very Osage. It is their story, and honestly, I'll admit, it drags. But if you look back at it, like, it's so needed. It's needed to establish their family, to establish who these characters are, to understand really what they are. Because I remember looking down at my watch in the movie, and I was like, oh, this has at least been an hour and 10 minutes. It was only like 35 minutes. Like, oh man, I was just like, I'm in for like 3 hours more. But I have a tendency to do that with like all films, where I'll look back, like, down at my watch within the first act, and I'll be like, okay, this thing's kind of dragging. Let's pick it up. But I know that's impatience with me. That's I like to, okay, just like, let's get to where we need to go, tell our story. But point is, the first act is all of the Osage's lineage and character, and specifically Molly's family and who they are, how they live, how they do things, what they believe in. And then the second act, I feel like, picks up where it's the flash forward, because there's like a couple years of a gap. I don't remember the exact time estimate, but then you see it where it's a bunch of like white people living in the in Molly's old house where her and her family lived.
Yeah.
And it's so like, dang, like the times are changing,
Yeah.
but then it's just like, it's like it's like right in your face, right at the moment where it says, hey, they're creeping in trying to get the money, because everybody, like all of Molly and her sisters all got married to white men. They all got married to white men. There was the dude who was married to one sister, and then he went and married the sister after his first wife died.
Right.
And it was just like, and like, it's crazy because like I think it's like that's how times were back then. And it's just like, I thought that was funny. I'm trying to, what was his name?
Bill Smith.
Yeah. Bill Smith. He went and married. Who was he? Was he married to?
First he was married to Minnie, and then he married Rita.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And that was just so funny because she's the first. Minnie's the first sister to die, right?
Yeah.
She
gets sick. They said she had like a wasting illness, or I don't know. They just said she died from illness.
Yeah, which is like what everybody kind of dies of if you weren't killed.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was implied that she was killed, like she was poisoned.
Mm-hmm.
It was definitely arranged.
Yeah.
And I think with Bill's character, there's like an animosity towards him and Leonardo's character, and I think it's because they both realize that the other person is in the game for like the same reasons.
Yeah.
He married Molly to get her money, and then Bill married Minnie and Rita for the same reasons, and that's kind of why, like at Minnie's funeral, he kicks him out of the house, and he's like, "With the way things are going, like I think you should just go outside." Like, I don't know. Everybody kind of acknowledges that they're doing the same thing, but I guess some characters convince themselves that it's not bad, or I don't know. They're all kind of, they have the same
same
motive,
goal.
the same goal.
Yeah. Every white character outside of Jesse Plemons' Tom White, which I said to you when we got out, I was like, it's so weird seeing him as a good guy, because everything he's been in, I've seen him, he's the bad guy.
Yeah.
It's just like in Breaking Bad, he's an idiot, and then he's one of the most hated characters in the final like half of the season, the last season, and then even in like Mike, where I remember seeing him for the first time, he's the bully, So it's just like everything I feel like he's been in, he's a bad guy. But I feel like the film really, really picks up when he gets there. Things kind of really start to escalate. Like seeds are being planted. Scorsese knew what he was doing. Making this film, telling it the way it did, because the moment the FBI gets there, it's okay. Things really start to escalate in terms of, okay, it's getting fleshed out, and the fruits of the labor, I should say, of the film are starting to finally pay off.
Yeah.
Because now you have the trials, and then it's and there's this like really, really like beautiful scene with the FBI, like shortly after they arrive. Cinematography wise, the whoever did the booking for this spot to film, like they knew what they were doing. So there's like this, I think, what is it, like dusk? It's like right before nighttime.
Yeah.
Where you see the sun going down, you see the night sky starting to creep in, and they're all like, they've driven out to like the middle of nowhere. Probably at the time that was like 20 minutes from town, with the year it was, but they all meet up. They're all just standing there kind of discussing their plans, in terms of like, hey, this is how we're going to go. This is what we're going to do. And then you see like an overarching like fire, which I think is like a really, really nice, like it was a nice touch. And it reveals that there's a fire on Hale's ranch, right?
His ranch.
Yeah. So it was on Robert De Niro's character's ranch. And then one of the FBI agent goes, I just sold him fire insurance yesterday.
Yeah.
You know, because and that's another like underlining theme with Robert De Niro's character is that he was trying to cash in on all of his insurances because he was money hungry, you know, and it's just like, which was funny because it almost like became a running gag in the film, you know, because he was trying to get off of he was trying to get the money of that one Osage character, I think it was Henry, where
the
he's
melancholic.
Yeah, he had the melancholy, and he was a big avid drinker.
Yeah.
And he kept telling him, like, oh, stay away from it because you're going to die. Almost using that reverse psychology. You know, you tell a kid, don't do it, and then they go and do it, you know. And and then does Henry end up dying?
He does, yeah. Yeah. But it's, so the plot of him is like, we have to wait until the year's over, basically, before we can collect the insurance.
Yeah.
And their plan is to just make it seem as if he offed himself. That's how they say it.
That's right. That's right.
They're like, shoot him in the front of the head.
Yeah.
And leave the weapon so like they can make it appear as if he did this himself. But the person that they get to do it, he shoots him from the back of the head, and he doesn't even leave the weapon. So that's kind of the downfall for those characters, where they're starting to become sloppy and they're not covering their tracks as well as they should.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously there's like the whole house explosion where even after that, the aftermath, the sheriff tells De Niro's character that he's like overextending himself, basically. Like he's making his presence too known, and it's kind of more obvious that there's somebody orchestrating these things, and it's not just an accident. So I think even those characters became self-aware of kind of their plots and their schemes, and they were saying like it's time to like kind of either cover it up better or stop altogether. But obviously like they get caught, and like they reap what they sow, essentially. All the actions that they did like throughout the whole movie, they're being held accountable for them finally.
That's right. Henry is the tipping point in the film. That's when the FBI really starts to pick up on things, which is it's interesting because when Ernest finally gets taken into custody, and then they keep him up all like I don't know, they keep him up for like a day or whatever. And then who is it? Is it Blackie who they bring in? Blackie. And then Ernest is like, "Can I have a moment with him?" He's like, "What'd I tell him? Or what'd you tell him?" He's like, "Everything." Yeah. And he's like trying to negotiate, and it's like it's funny because like we were talking after the film, and it was just like there were scenes in the film, or there were many moments in the film that I don't think were necessarily meant to be funny, but they just were because of, I don't want to say the goofiness of the characters, but how dumb and naive the characters were. So like I feel like you know they weren't smart, and then even Molly had some scenes where she would respond to like to Ernest when they were first getting to know each other, and it was funny interactions because it's like he's a dumb white dude, like that's really what he is, you know. He didn't understand, you know, whether it was her language or the things she would just say, like the small little jabs she would throw back at him when he was trying to be, you know, plant seeds and like act like he was sincere and all that, which I thought was funny. One thing that also carries out long throughout the film is Molly's struggle with diabetes. She has it, and then the town doctors come in and say, hey, like, you know, we have insulin, and it comes from the pancreas of a cow. Of a cow? Yeah, I thought it was a pig, but yeah, of a cow. And you know, you're one of 5 people in the world to have it, you know, and so they make her feel special and all that. It turns out to be poison or something to feel. I don't know if it necessarily heightened the feeling of diabetes, but it also gave her, you know, she started throwing up more. She was a lot more bedridden. She was clearly in a weakened state and wasn't recovering as she fully felt. By the time Ernest gets taken into custody, she is horrible. Yeah. Like she looks bad. And there's a scene where her mom dies where it's just like, oh, if you see the owl, your time's soon. She sees an owl, but her time isn't anywhere near.
Yeah.
And then she hallucinates where she sees Uncle Hale, William Hale, and he's not there at all.
Yeah.
And that scene was like very, very interesting because okay, and then when she finally gets taken, to the hospital to a real doctor, and she gets the insulin, she's basically revived back to health.
Right.
Which is something I honestly kind of thought was gonna happen, just because I was just like, they're taking too long to kill her, like, but then like I was thinking, okay, I was just like, William Hale, he's very methodical about things. I was like, maybe this is his plan for her. But then I think of like when you're telling a film, like you're telling a story in a film, I was just like, if something's dragging on, just it may not be going in the direction you may think it be going. But I was just like, dude, they're taking a really long time to kill her, like, because by the time she's throwing up, can't completely bedridden. I was just like, there's no way, she's still alive. Like, it's just like, what's going on?
Yeah.
But sure enough, she gets nursed back to health, and she looks I don't want to say as good as she did in the beginning of the film, but I also don't want to say, but she was back to health. She was back to normal health, and it was just, it was interesting, because then even then there's like a couple year gap or a couple month gap where she had clearly got a bunch of treatment with real insulin, and then she meets Ernest again in like the middle of nowhere. And she's again nursed back to health and looked really, really well. But overall, I mean, it's just like the story that Scorsese was telling, overall just fantastic. Knew what he's doing with the story. I mean, he's no stranger to telling a story about whether it's whether about culture throughout America, or a certain background, or whether it's religion. It's like Scorsese knows how to tell a story.
Yeah.
Overall, but yeah, anything you want to add?
I really liked how the movie is about 3.5 hours long, and there's pretty much distinct turning points each hour of the movie where it becomes a different focus point. Kind of, you touched on it already, where like the first hour is about the Osage, and the audience is kind of with Ernest as a surrogate because he's coming into the situation as like a newcomer, and he's seeing everything for the first time, like the audience. So we're kind of introduced to the way that they are, and sure, you can probably cut some of that out, but I feel like it really adds to the movie, and putting the culture on display is important because it fleshes out these characters, and it makes it even more heartbreaking when they're being murdered, because their family, kind of what they value, and you see the people that are doing it, and what they value, and it's really only with like the incentive of getting their money, and like they don't really have a culture beyond like stealing from them. And that's kind of what the second half of the movie is about. Like once Ernest is in Molly's life, and he's kind of weaseled himself into her family, you start to see what he does with the people who also are in a similar situation where they've married Osage women, and they're killing them, and they're stealing their jewels after they've been murdered from their caskets. And like they say that they love them, and they're supporters, but really like they're kind of perpetuating.
They're leeches.
Yeah, they're leeches. They're making sure that they're better off than the Osage, and then they're really just kind of disposing of them once they're done using them in a way. So that's the second half, which was kind of interesting to see, because he doesn't flinch away from the violence. Like he shows all of it. And I feel like with a story like this, a lot of people not knowing that this actually happened, like to be shown the violence, I feel like it hits more than if it was just read in a book. The book is probably good, but I feel like Scorsese's really good with showing violence, and having the audience kind of question the characters that are inflicting this violence, because he makes you like them, but they do things in in a way that's confusing, where it makes you think about like, are these good people, like, or are these just like not good people at all? And like those instances where they did maybe like a good deed, that was kind of the exception, not the rule. And then like the third part of the movie is about kind of the first two parts, taking that into like, I don't know, fleshing it out, because they lose count of how many Osage were murdered. So
Yeah.
it starts to add up to a certain point where it's boiling, and they have to address it. So that's why the FBI comes. And
Yeah.
I kind of like that there was a line where the people that sent out for the FBI, they mentioned, like, was it the total amount of deaths that were accumulating, or was it the $20,000 that they had to send the government for them to finally show up? And then like Tom White says something like, well, I mean, I'm here now, so like I can still solve these murders. So like I like how they included that, how even like though the FBI did eventually solve the, like, who was doing this, they included that kind of monetary incentive for them was kind of a catalyst for them to show up. Like Molly went to DC
Yeah.
to tell the president that these people were being murdered, but that money also kind of went a long way. So like, I don't know, even the people that do help, that are the good guys of the story, they also are kind of influenced by money in a way too. So like,
Yeah.
I don't know, this movie kind of shed a light on just America in general. And like, I don't know, I like that, how there weren't any like, this is a good guy, this is a bad guy. Like there was a lot of nuance to these characters. And I like movies that don't tell the audience like, this is a bad guy, this is a good guy.
A lot of gray area,
Yeah.
because it goes into factors of just like whether or not you're a good or bad person. Because like at the end of the day, like yeah, like Ernest did a lot of bad things, but I think also, but ultimately, like he had a lot of good intention and heart when he was thinking on his own and when he was doing things, for on his own.
Yeah.
Um, whereas someone like Robert De Niro, yeah, he was moving in the ways like I care about these people, but ultimately well, not the complete opposite, because I'm sure he cared about them,
Yeah.
but like we said, he didn't care about him. He didn't care about them more than their money,
Right.
and even his money, So it's just like, I mean, overall, like you said, um, how it sheds a light on how America is. Like it's true, it's just like if you're waving a checkbook, it's easy to get priority in terms of things looked at. In the case of obviously the Osage being murdered, but the fact that they Molly's willing to go out and say like, yeah, or was it 20,000 that we had to, it's just like, yeah, you're really only here because we signed you a big check, you wouldn't be here, which in all honesty is the truth. But which it sucks because she's shooting the messenger in that sense. She's telling Tom White that when Tom White's only assigned to this, he doesn't choose where he goes. I'm sure he was given orders, hey, you have to go here.
Yeah.
So it's in that sense, it's don't shoot the messenger, because he's ultimately here just to crack the case, and to crack, what, crack down on what's going on.
Right.
So it's just like ultimately, like someone like Tom White, I'm sure him, yes, his bosses were motivated to be like, okay, yeah, we're just going to send you there because they sent us a check. For him, this is probably like, hey, no, I can get, I can look good if I'm able to solve this case. I can get a, promotion. I can get, better pay and stuff like that, trying to set him up. So, with ultimately having the right intentions, at heart in this film. But overall, I mean, it's just like I said, I'm glad I saw it, because I was really like, I don't think I can do another 3 hours in a film this year. There were a lot of 3 hour films this year.
Yeah.
This is like the third or fourth one. Because we had I was gonna say Avatar. Avatar was last year though.
Didn't see that one.
You see Avatar? No.
No.
You can skip it.
I can skip it.
Yeah. We had Oppenheimer. No, in the last calendar year, I should say.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of 3 hour films. But yeah, I mean, closing thoughts on this film.
I would say that I think everybody, as long as this movie's in theaters, I feel like people should see it at least once, just because it covers a a period of American history that, as far as I know, isn't really discussed a lot. At least until the book was published, and kind of became like public discussion. But even the audiences that I've been a part of, they've been pretty varied. It's not like one type of person. I see everybody seeing it. So like, I think this movie is for everybody, regardless of the runtime. If that's something that's not appealing, 3.5 hours, then maybe you already know that you won't like it because it's a long movie. But if you're open to sitting with something for that long and kind of watching this like director at the top of his game, like take you on a journey and a story, and like if you're open to that, then I feel like it's worth watching and paying to see, because I don't imagine it'll be in theaters much longer, since it's an Apple movie. They'll have it in theaters for maybe a couple weeks, but
Then
and then
boot it onto the Apple TV Plus.
yeah, they'll get rid of it. But as
Yeah.
long as it's in theaters, I think everyone should check it out. And even if you can't go to a theater, it's gonna be streaming soon, so it might even be more digestible in a set, like a home setting, where you can pause it.
Yeah,
And
you can
have an
take some
intermission.
time, because I think, like you say, like, it's just like, there's, on top of the runtime, it's a heavy film.
Yeah.
It's a very emotional, heavy film. There's a lot of the scenes that they show of killings or things like that. Some of them can get pretty gory, or maybe a little uneasy. So it's just like it's definitely not for everybody. Like you said, if like you appeal to this, or you love Martin Scorsese, I mean, how could you not?
Yeah.
Or even if like you're just interested in American history, in American history, this is something for you. It's just like but overall, I mean, it's a fantastic film. Scorsese's best, probably not, but I don't think at this stage in his career, it's gonna be hard to top a lot of the things he's already done.
Yeah.
Well, lastly, I wanted to, before we wrap up, I forgot, I wanted to mention this earlier. At the end of the film, there's a wrap up of everything that happened.
Yes.
Where it's playing in front of like an audience, and they're telling the stories of what happened to everybody, and there's sound effects, and it's a really, really good film, or it's a really good part of the film, like to wrap up the film, because it tells you, what everybody did and what happened to everybody, and then you learn how everybody died, and it's just like, and it's being told like in a sense of, I don't want to say, maybe from like us watching, it's very, very comedic.
Yeah.
But when you're hearing it there, I mean, that's how it was, like, because I'm like, to me, the way the sound effects were included, it sounds like it was also being broadcasted like through radio network. So that's where the sound effects come in. You have to keep the attention of the people back then, so it's just like, I thought that was really, really neat. And I think that wasn't Scorsese at the end.
That was him.
Was it? I thought, okay, I wasn't sure, but yeah. So obviously there's his cameo, in the film.
They bring him out to read Molly's obituary, and they point out how in her obituary they don't mention the murders at all, or Ernest. Mm-hmm. They say her new last name, it was like Molly Cobb or something.
Yeah.
But he's reading her obituary, and then the movie ends kind of once he's done reading that. Like he goes over, it's like an epilogue. This is the bookend to the story. It's a recap years later of a radio play that's kind of going over the crime that was solved. But I appreciated the inclusion of it, because it was kind of that part of the movie where they show like a black screen and they say like, this character went on to do this.
Yeah.
Or this, they do a recap of what's in store for these characters, but I'd never seen it done this way. Usually it's like a fake documentary, or it's some like footage that's concluding everything, but because of the period, they did it in a radio play kind of format, which I liked. And then I liked the sound effects, the wacky sounds, and the different voice actors that are supposed to play Ernest and Molly and William's character.
It really helped to keeping you involved in that, if you're listening. There's also there's actually one more scene after that. the powwow scene.
Oh yeah,
Which was really, really neat
out.
to see. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which was really cool. You see a bunch of Indians, which I would assume are the Osage Indians now.
Yeah, they look contemporary.
Yeah, in modern day, yeah, because they're wearing, newer jeans and the drums look newer, up to, newer standards.
Yeah.
And that's how the film really ends. But overall, I mean, it's a fantastic film. Like you said, like we said, probably not necessarily for everybody, but definitely worth checking out, I would say.
Yeah. I would encourage people to get a free trial of Apple TV for this, or Apple,
once it gets there, yeah.
And then you can cancel it. If you don't
really.
want to keep it. But yeah, I think whenever you have time to watch something like this, I think it's worth it. Even to split it up. Like if you watch half of it, you can watch the second half.
You can watch it in an hour and a half.
Yeah.
I before we close everything out, I know that not that it necessarily matters. On Rotten Tomato, it scored at a 92 for the critics, and the audience gave it an 85. I can say that's right around where I was, probably about an 80, 85 with the film. So I think it's not too far off. It's not can't deny how good of a film that it is. But before we wrap up, is there anybody you want to shout out or give us shout out to?
I don't know, not really.
No? All right, there's no pressure to.
Yeah, no.
Not at all.
Martin Scorsese. I hope he can make another movie after this, but if he doesn't, this isn't he's 82.
Okay.
This isn't a bad movie to end his career on. Like I feel like when he is reading her obituary, like if that's the last thing we see from him, like it's fitting. But I hope he makes more movies and
he's 80.
He never dies. But shout out to him for getting this made.
If Cameron can plan to make Avatar 6 while he's 130, Scorsese can go on and direct a couple more films. So
Well, actually, one more thing. I really appreciated how before the movie started, they showed like at least 3 comic book trailers, and I was like, I bet Scorsese would love that.
Oh, he was upset.
They showed they showed a few, and I was like, I'm glad that they did that.
They showed the Marvels. They showed Aquaman. What was the third one?
It was. Oh no, it was Napoleon.
Oh. Well, that's not a bad film to have.
Yeah.
That's also going to be in 70.
Argyle, I guess, technically is like spy. I don't know. I guess it was just 2.
Spy stuff.
Just 2 comic book movies, but it was still funny that they included that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Joseph, thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you, Adam.
Glad we're finally able to get you in here.
Yeah.
We'll definitely have you back for sure.
Yeah.
But guys, that is going to do it for this review for Killers of the Flower Moon. If you enjoyed it, again, we'd appreciate a thumbs up, a subscribe, a share. Again, if you don't love puppies and or if you want to disappoint our special guest Joseph here, don't share it. I'm just saying, so do the right thing. What would Jesus do? But anyways, as always, guys, I'm Adam.
I'm Joseph.
And this was, I think, episode 145 of Arvo Addiction. Sic Parvis Magna, everybody.